Okay, welcome everybody to episode 112, I believe. That took a little longer, so hopefully the internet connection is all good. New Airbnb, you know me, I've switched. This is it's got to be number 7 Airbnb in the last 2 months. But here we are. Thank you very much for joining me. If you are new here, of course, welcome. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so you get notified of future live streams and also videos. I will start those soon as well. And of course, everybody, give it a like for me. Let's juice the YouTube algorithm a little bit and get this out to a few more people. So today, got a good show. I think everybody's going to hopefully learn something about the short volatility trade. We've got 3 segments here. I'll try to keep them quick so we can have plenty of time for the live Q&A, of course. But I do want to talk about the concept, a little extension from last week's live stream, where I did mention the concept of daily rebalancing, and it's a little bit confusing for people. So let's unpack that a little bit. And then I'm also going to try to show people the comparisons between short volatility and long volatility, because we do have a lot of choices in the volatility landscape. So you've got things, for example, like the VXX on the long side, and then the inverse of that would be the SVIX. And, 0.5 SVXY versus half the VXX, things like that. And we'll kind of pit them against each other and see which one I think that most people should be using. And then the third one, that's going to be a really quick one. But I did mention to our VTS community that because we're closing a couple of trades today, that I would just go ahead and do those live. It's never a bad idea for people to just see options being traded. A lot of people get intimidated with options trading. They think, oh, I don't understand this. He's talking about theta and gamma and what's going on. So I just want people to see that it's actually a lot easier than it might sound. And I'm going to execute those trades live. So you can start getting your questions in the Q&A. Of course, ask me trading questions, volatility, options related, but also these live streams are very casual and we're just kind of hanging out. And so ask me anything. Sometimes they get pretty interesting. I don't know if people are going to talk about the whole scandal that's going on. I'm not sure I have a whole lot to add to that, but we'll see. You can ask me anything you want. But yeah, let's get started on the first segment. So what I want to talk about, because the short volatility trade can oftentimes be presented in a certain way that gives people the impression that it really is an ATM machine and everybody can just get in there, short volatility, just blindly, money falls from the sky. And you see a lot of this on Twitter. You see people flashing charts and whatnot. I'll just kind of show you the chart that is typically what you are going to see in these scenarios. You're going to see the VXX flash that looks something like this, right? The long volatility, the 1x long vol product. VXX was the original product launched in January 2009. And this chart obviously gives people the impression that it is completely diabolical. And of course, you'd have to be a moron not to be able to make money shorting volatility, right? You just do whatever you want. Eventually, it's a guaranteed profit. That's how it's being presented to people. And so the concept of daily rebalancing comes in, where I actually want to communicate why the short volatility trade is significantly harder than maybe people think it is, and certainly what this chart gives people the impression that it should be. So it doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. And in fact, we get rid of that. I would actually still say that I do believe that everybody should have an allocation to a short volatility strategy. Ignore that. In their portfolio. I really do believe that it's an opportunity to be more quant-based, to be more rules-based, and it's a really fantastic trading opportunity. So I'm not trying to scare anybody away from this, but you do have to actually see that this chart, from a practical trader's perspective, is completely irrelevant. So let's start from the beginning. If we were to try to plot something like the S&P 500 on a chart that looks like this, you've probably seen it before, but if we were going to do that, it's actually very easy. You just get the prices of the SPY, right? I always use the SPY because it includes the dividends. They're included in this. And then you just get the daily returns and you basically run it through. You can start at $10,000, whatever you want. And it's just calculating the daily difference, right? The daily changes. Or you could do it another way. You could simply plot the SPY on a chart and it's going to be the same thing. So if you use starting with 10,000, it looks like this, All right, this is going back to the launch of VIX futures in 2004, 10% return, 55% drawdown. We've covered this all before. Or if you plot it price-wise, you can see the scale is now just the simple price of the SPY. It's exactly the same thing, right? This is not complicated. Everybody knows how to do this. The difference comes in when you do something like the VXX, for example. This is a long volatility ETF. So when you plot it on a chart in the same way, of course, it's going to look like this. The VXX is an insurance product. It goes down by design. It's not broken. It's not manipulated. It's not some, scam that's being perpetrated on the retail traders. It is just simply an insurance product. All insurance products look like this on a chart. If you were to do a rolling 30-day hedge on the S&P 500, for example, just buying out of the money put options, it would look something like this. If you're buying car insurance, it looks like this. Obviously you're paying your premiums as you go, and maybe once every however long happens, you get some type of payout. That's what the VXX is. So no surprise, on a long-term chart, the VXX does go down 99.99%. So the question becomes, well, can you just short this thing and just, make millions of dollars? How come we're all not just short volatility millionaires? This is the easiest thing in the world. Well, the problem is when you short something, and of course, I'm probably not saying anything people don't know, but when you short something, you can only ever make 100% return, right? It can only actually go to zero. So you've got the VIX futures launching in 2004. If we go back to 2004 and look at it on a chart, if you were to short it here, it is guaranteed profit over that time frame. But if you annualize that return, 20 years making 100%, you are actually only making 3.2% per year. This is what the VXX actually looks like if you were to just do that. So let's say you had a portfolio of $100,000 and you thought you were going to be the smart one. You're only going to short volatility with 20% of your capital, right? And you're just going to wait. You're going to buy and hold. Well, of course you're going to make your 20%, but it's going to take a while. Now, it may not take 20 years. This is somewhat deceptive because there were some 10-year periods where you could have gotten almost all of it in 10 years. There's actually some good 5-year periods where you could get 90 or 95% out of it. So it's not 3.2 if you have decent timing. It may be double that, but it's a very low rate of return. But the other problem, of course, hopefully nobody's trying to make a single-digit rate of return when they're shorting vol. But the second problem is, of course, when you're short something, you have unlimited loss. So if you were to be that person who shorts 20% of their portfolio, of course, during the financial crisis, this thing spikes up 558%. And not only do you lose your 20% of your short volatility allocation, but you lose your entire portfolio because you're short something with unlimited loss and it went up 550% and you wiped out your entire portfolio. So if you were to do that, not only would you make a horrendous rate of return, but you'd also guaranteed to blow up your account. So please don't do that. Please don't just short something and look at this and say this is guaranteed money. It is certainly not. And even if you didn't blow up your account, you're still going to make a tremendously low rate of return. But that's essentially what you're looking at. But when you short volatility, of course, most people are in and out of trades, right? They typically maybe weekly timeframes. For me personally, I do a lot of VXX trading on weekly timeframes, anywhere from like 3 or 4 days to maybe 7 or 8 days. So you have to actually rebalance the trade. That's how trading works. Nobody actually shorts and then just waits 20 years. So when you daily rebalance the VXX, it actually looks like this. And all that is just reflecting the fact that whenever you rebalance your portfolio, because you're compounding geometrically with investment returns, of course, it's resetting constantly as you go. This is how you make a better rate of return, by rebalancing and taking shorter term trades and adding up the profit as you go and compounding geometrically. Now you can really get somewhere. So this is essentially what we're talking about. If you make 5.83%, it's not, world beating or anything, but that would actually end up being a 250% rate of return over that same time period. Now, again, you would probably want to do much better, but the general point that I'm trying to make is when you look at this chart, Now you can start to gain an appreciation for why the short volatility trade is so difficult. It's not free money. It doesn't look like this. It's not something you can just short and forget forever. And this is why the real chart of VXX, this is why you can get an idea for why Wall Street, the best and brightest on Wall Street, have a difficult time even making a 5% rate of return. If we look at the SIBO Short Volatility Index, hedge funds that are specifically shorting volatility, I just put a 5% inflation benchmark here. I realize that's a little bit higher than the official government numbers, but hopefully we can all agree that those are, heavily manipulated. And when you include housing and education and healthcare, obviously inflation's way higher than the 3 or 4% the government says. But you can see that the best and brightest on Wall Street are having a difficult time even keeping up with inflation. That's insane. If you looked at this, you'd be like, well, what are these idiots doing? I mean, I can't believe they can't do better than 5% a year. Well, there's actually quite a few reasons why some people struggle with short volatility. So this is a reason why I'm doing this live stream today, is because I do actually want to communicate to people that there is certainly an opportunity to make money shorting volatility. But the last thing in the world you want to do is listen to all those people on Twitter that tell you that it's free money and all you do is short and do this and money falls from the sky. That's extremely dangerous. And there's many, many ways that you can blow up your account if you're going to be doing that. So what your goal should be if you're going to be an effective short volatility trader is, first of all, understand that this is the baseline. It's not good. And then you're trying to use metrics and use a sophisticated system to try to cut some of these bottoms, to try to reduce some of these drawdowns. That's what my work at VTS is essentially focusing on, where we're only short volatility 60% of the time. And we're in either safety gold or sometimes even long volatility, capitalizing on the fact that you can't just do one basic simple thing and make money. The markets doesn't work that way. It's far too competitive. There's far too many sophisticated traders out there, institutions with access to the best traders, the best software, entire teams of analysts. That's who you're competing against. Don't be fooled into thinking you're just going to go into this market and just short something and look at how easy it is. That is absolutely not true. So that is one of the main reasons why I actually don't even short volatility with the ETFs. We use the inverse products. Now, that will be the next segment, but a few of you have seen this, but I just want to remind you that just because the results are diabolical and the drawdown is insane, that's not actually the only negatives. There are actually a few more, and I just want to remind people of that. I don't ever short the volatility ETPs directly. First, there's big fees involved because you're borrowing shares to short, and it's not cheap. This is many multiples more expensive than standard trade fees for some of the other option trades, so this is always a major headwind. Second, they're not always available to borrow. You might think you've got a great trade setup that you want to jump in on, but if there's no shares to borrow, then what does it matter? Third, you can have your shares called away on you at any time, so you're not really in control of your own trade. Plus, you should know that the time where they are most likely to get called away on you is when you least want them to be. Probably it's going to be when you're doing damage control on a trade that isn't going well, and you might want a little extra time to fix your trade, but you're not going to be able to because the shares get called away on you. And lastly, and probably the biggest reason here, when you short shares, you have unlimited loss. We're talking about volatility ETFs here. They can spike up hundreds of percent, maybe 1,500, 2,000% if you're talking about the UVXY. Why on earth would anybody trade unlimited loss when one flash crash will wipe out your portfolio? Okay, so hopefully I've helped a few people dodge that initial landmine where they're entering the short volatility space with a massive misconception on how not easy that trade is. So the next thing that we're going to go into here, when we're going short vol versus long vol, I'm saying that as short volatility versus long volatility, but I'm also saying that from the perspective of we're actually going to be using the indexes called short vol and long vol. And I'm going to try to illustrate why I have consistently told people that nearly everybody is better using the inverse products rather than the long products. So remember, we do have a volatility landscape. We've got several ETFs at our disposal here, and we can choose the ones that match our risk tolerance and what is best. So what we're talking about now There is the VXX, which is a long vol product, and the VIXY is materially identical. It's just a different issuer. And then on the inverse side, there is the SVIX, which is -1. It's essentially a mirror image of the other one. Now, the problem again, and the reason I went through the other page first, is because the SVIX does not look like an inverse of this. Of course, this is not the actual short vol trade. The SVIX inverse looks a whole lot more like this, actually. So it is important to understand that you do always have to do your daily rebalancing. But secondly, there's a reason why people should be leaning into the inverse products rather than the shorting the long products, beyond the little clip that I just showed. So the short vol index is the underlying index under the ETF SVIX. Now, if people don't know, I don't really want to get into it in too much detail, but volatility ETPs do actually track underlying indexes. They're not based on supply and demand. So SVIX doesn't go up if a whole bunch of people buy it, and it doesn't go down if a whole bunch of people sell it or short it. It tracks an underlying index of rolling front 2-month VIX futures. And there's an underlying index to that. It's called ShortVOL. And then the other product called UVIX, which is a 2 times long, it uses the Long Vol index at 2 times leverage. And then there's other indexes as well. For example, the index for VXX, it's actually called the SPVIX STR index, slightly different. The only reason I'm not using that index right now is because in 2018, there was an issue where it kind of broke. There was a liquidity crunch at the Volpocalypse event in February 2018, and the SPVIX STR index did not do very well at all. That has all been fixed, so it is now just as good as the short vol, long vol indexes, but let's just compare apples to apples today. So SVIX versus basically 1 times long vol index. This one needs to be daily rebalanced. And what we're facing here, you can see, if you short the long vol index versus going long the short vol index, it's essentially the same performance, right? There is slight differences here on the margins, but a little bit different. Now, the reason that you wouldn't want to use the long vol index, like that clip showed, is, again, it's unlimited loss, so this is a problem. But, borrowing shares to short is not always available, and there's many reasons why you wouldn't want to do it. But remember fees, right? So trade fees on VXX, for example, probably about 3% annual, 3 to 4%. So when you're plotting it on a chart, you can see that it does appear like shorting the long vol index would be slightly better, but then you're facing all the headwinds, plus you're facing fees. You are actually better off using the SVIX on the short side. So, again, this is why when people see this, oh, why do you use the SVXY? Well, there's many reasons I went into with that clip, with just the tradability of it, but also not only is it a better rate of return, but it is also better risk management. Why would anybody choose to do something that is worse in both categories, right? So you've got the short 1/2 VXX. You could do that instead of SVXY, but the rate of return, it turns out when you back out the borrowing fees, it's actually going to be lower than just using the inverse product. So this is the way of basically explaining. I use the SVXY. If you were a very high risk trader and you wanted the full 1 times leverage, I personally don't think it's necessary. My strategy makes 30% a year without it. But if you were, then of course you're better off using the SVIX than shorting the VXX. And you would be better off, for example, using SVXY and buying a 3 times allocation, or buying the SVIX and using a slightly larger allocation versus shorting the UVXY. If you ever wanted that much risk, I don't know why anybody would want to do that. But yes, you're always better off using the inverse products. And I would recommend, I can't tell anybody what to do, of course. There's different ways to make money. If it is somehow part of your rather strange strategy, then, go for it. But for 99% of people out there, you are just better off sticking with the inverse products. They are better, higher return long-term, much, much less risk. You're not risking blowing up your account, which on a long enough time horizon will absolutely happen to people who short the ETFs directly or short naked calls, for example. Your days are numbered. You might as well just start the clock to the end of your account, because on a long enough time horizon, it might take 10 years, but it's going to happen. And people do notice that in the short vol space, that they listen to the wrong people on Twitter. Seems like it's just the easiest trade in the world. And usually it is for several weeks, several months even. You can go a pretty long time and you think I'm making a killing. I can't believe I didn't do this 10 years ago. And then you'll find that very, very quickly you give it, most of it back or sometimes all of it and then some. So the whole, two small steps forward and then one giant step back, that tends to be the pattern that people see. So I'm just trying to help you guys avoid that. Always stick to the inverse products if you can. All right, so this is kind of like an inside VTS type thing, but really quickly, I am going to, just for my own community, and you can just follow along, we actually do have 2 trades to close within the email today. So this is my daily email that went out to subscribers. You can see we've got 2 trades, both of them in the Iron Condor strategy. So essentially what it is, we are closing 2 trades. We had 2 open, so this is what it looks like here for that strategy. And remember, there is a course. If you subscribe to VTS, there's a 30 video course in there on Iron Condors, but we're actually going to close both of them. Now, the reason that we are closing them is different for both of these trades. So there's really only 2 things that actually make us close trades. The first one would be stop loss or stop gain. For an Iron Condor, we use a 50% stop loss, 50% stop gain based on the premium collected. So this trade for me personally was $1.23. So the stop loss would be 1.5 times that value. So somewhere around $1.80, give or take. But it's actually only $1.51. So it hasn't reached the stop. But the other way that we might close a trade is this one in particular only has 28 days left to expiration. Now, we open Iron Condors with 45 to 75 days to expiration. Long dated is always safer. It reduces the gamma exposure, and you will just get far more easy winners doing that. We don't trade short term, especially with Iron Condors. But inside 30 days, it starts to kind of dance on that gamma knife edge a little bit, where one single day in the market could take it down significantly. Now, of course, one bad day could take it up and you'd make a nice profit. But when it's inside 30 days and also approaching the short strikes, that's when I would say, well, it's time to close the trade. So this one is going to be closed for, it appears, around $1.51. I opened it for $1.23, so it's a small loss, not a big deal. The other trade, we have a calendar on GLD, and we opened this one probably about 2 weeks ago. And again, same thing. We will only open and close these. We will only close these trades once we're in them if those 2 things happen. Either it hits the stop gain stop loss, or it's inside 30 days and it's also risking. So it's 28 days now. If it was like really close to the edges, I would also close it for the same reason. But today, this one has actually hit the stop gain. So this is a trade that has now been profitable enough to take the gain. Now, it was at 220 when I sent my email. My stop gain is 219. It's 215 now. So it's not actually at the stop gain. It's just a few cents short. But I'm going to close this one as well. So like I said, with options trading, it's really, really not that difficult. Let's close the calendar first. So you will literally just highlight the trade, right? What am I doing? I'm clicking the wrong button. There you go. You're going to highlight both of the strikes, and this is in TOS, Thinkorswim. I'm sure it's very, very similar in whatever software you're doing, but you just close the order, right? So you just sell 4 calendars. Of course, pay attention, but I've done this, thousands of times, so I don't really need to. But you're just going to close the trade. And so, of course, when you're doing a credit or debit spread, as in the case of a calendar, right now I'm closing it, so I have to actually sell the position I had open. I want a higher premium. That would be more beneficial for me. So the mid is 217 now. There's nothing wrong with trying to get an extra penny. So let's say 218, and it just goes up into the queue. Move that away. You can see I'm trying to get 218 and it says 215. I would probably go closer to the mark in this case, but the 30-second rule, just wait a little bit. You never know. We don't have to nickel and dime things. And then you would just move this down a little bit, progressively down. So you can watch me go through it. 30-second rule, 217 I'm trying to get, and it's at 215. I will probably have to click 2 more, but I'm just going to go through the process. Nothing wrong with just having people watch me go through this. It's actually really, really easy. So now we're down to 216 we're trying to get, and it's still trading at 215. So, wait 20, 30 seconds, drop it down to 215. And now I'm getting kind of close to where you might get it. Now, of course, these are calendars, so there's 2 legs. And with the Iron Condor later, there's 4 legs. So don't be surprised if you don't always get it right on the mid. And especially sometimes there are display issues. I have noticed with Interactive Brokers, for example, sometimes it'll say the mark is 215 and it's not. It's like 205 or 210. Sometimes it can be significantly off. Toss is usually just a few pennies. So let's see what happens here. Again, we're just going to keep going. And you're just going to keep doing that until you get the price. Now, I could have started at 215, but whatever. That didn't take very long at all. So that trade is now closed. That is for a debit spread of a calendar. But now if we want to trade an Iron Condor, there's 4 legs. So now I'm just going to highlight the 4. All right, it's the same thing. You just highlight the trade you're doing. And I should point out that you could do this differently. Like, let's say you were only closing 2 for whatever reason. You can just highlight 2, but I open and close them as a spread. So now let's do that. Let's close this trade. Now, in this case, Iron Condors are credit spreads. So I'm actually buying it back when I'm trying to close it. So when you're paying for something, you want to pay as little as possible, right? So it's $1.53. Let's say $1.51. And I would literally just do the same process. So now I'm trying to get $1.51. It's saying it's going to get $1.52. I would anticipate probably $1.53 if I had to guess, but nothing wrong with doing the 30-second rule and giving it a shot. Wait 20, 30 seconds. I'm not going to do it because it's a live stream, but you get the point. You can just click it up pennies and then, 153. I got it right on the mid. And that trade is now closed. So let's just see what I probably ended up with. It's still 215. QQQ is now $1.52. And those are done. So really simple stuff. It doesn't take long. These are trades that were open for, like the Qs trade was open for about 3 weeks. And the gold trade was open for maybe 2 weeks. So you can see that, look, that took 5 minutes. I could have done it in 2. And that's over a 3-week period. So trading Iron Condors is not a high time commitment strategy. It's something that I, again, personally believe that everybody should have an allocation to Iron Condors, 5%, 10% of your portfolio, because they are market neutral. And it's just a different diversification method to what is very likely a net long equities portfolio that you have. Most people do. So you absolutely want some Iron Condors in there. And it may be a little bit intimidating. You think, oh my God, I don't know what options are. There's 4 legs. How do I even open this thing? It's one click of a button. It opens the whole thing as a 4-leg Iron Condor. I closed the whole thing as a 4-leg Iron Condor. It's really easy stuff. So don't shy away from it. Get some options exposure in your portfolio, and you should be good to go. So that's it for the rundown. Now all we have to do is answer some questions live from the community. These are coming in, I can see from YouTube only. But what's cool is if you are an X user, you can actually ask questions directly on X as well, and it'll show me. So for example, I've got this one. You can see the little YouTube symbol. Sometimes they say X. So it does mean I've got a couple followers on X anyway. Okay, please enlighten us about your long vol strategies. Well, Buck Rogers, I'm old enough to know what that means. Flash from the past to my childhood. I don't have anything that I would call directly long volatility. So essentially what I've got is, as I kind of highlighted here, our tactical volatility strategy will at times be pure long volatility. So that happens, but it's only on about 3% of trading days. So I would certainly not call this a long vol strategy. I'd call it a long short with a safety position. But, this is long vol exposure at the right times. The other thing that I could highlight, I suppose my second, when I'm trading earnings, for example, about 80 to 90% of the time, I'm using long straddle options. And essentially what I'm doing is maybe, 20 days ahead of the earnings announcement, maybe 10 days for the earnings and then 20 days for the actual option expiration. I'm using a long straddle, trying to capitalize on a rise in volatility as the anticipation of an earnings announcement comes. And then right before the announcement hits, close the trade beforehand. That's why we use long straddles. So, of course, if you're opening long straddles, this only happens during earnings season. But if there is a volatility spike, that's going to be very beneficial for the overall portfolio. That's when you can really make some money. So that's technically speaking long volatility, but not rolling. It's just during earnings season. I've got another zero DTE strategy that relies on essentially capitalizing on volatility pops. So I've got that. That's, a small but meaningful proportion of my portfolio. And then the only thing I think other than that, I do have a strategy that's essentially rolling long vol, but it's a very small allocation, just trying to capitalize on the extreme convexity of long volatility only during a crisis. Basically, throwing that money away most of the year, hoping to get, 1 or 2 times a year where you get a little payoff. Basically an insurance strategy. But again, it's not a major part of my portfolio. I'm neutral to net long the market, and I just make sure that I have so many different strategies that can have so many different exposures to the market that's how I manage my risk. It's not necessarily hedging, so to speak. I don't believe in hedging. I think it's bleeding capital unnecessarily. But yeah, I've got a few. Anybody who tells you that, you see it a lot on Twitter. I always hack on Twitter traders, but it is true. They're pretty terrible. Most of them are just people who surf it 6 months ago and they pretend they're millionaires, and really they started trading 6 months ago. But you hear a lot of them say stupid things like, only smart people only short vol and only morons go long vol. This is totally not true. With options trading, of course, the only basic general rule, generalization that I would make is you want to sell things that are expensive and you want to buy things that are cheap, right? That there's no rule that says, smart people short vol always and dumb people long vol. That's not the case at all. There's plenty of times when the long vol people, if they know what they're doing, of course it's few and far between, but can make plenty of money as well. So I've got some, definitely. All right. Don't you find Dubai extremely materialistic and extremely hot? So yeah, good question. I live in Dubai. I'm a Dubai resident. I do also live half the year in Taiwan, which is also an extremely hot country and also an extremely materialistic country because Asians are also quite materialistic. I do, but as you've probably heard me say at some point, unless you're brand new here, I'm kind of a minimalist. I've just always lived my life being a minimalist. Now, I'm not a financial minimalist. I always want to draw this line. I'm a stuff minimalist. I actually do spend quite a lot of money every year. It would surprise people how much I spend. You can see my lifestyle. I'm traveling most of the year. I'm in 7 Airbnbs in the last 2 months. I was in France for 3 weeks with my wife, just like last week. We travel a lot. I've probably been to 20 different countries in the last 3 or 4 years. So I'm not a minimalist in that respect, but I'm a stuff minimalist. I just don't care about stuff. I can fit all of my stuff in 2 suitcases. My whole life fits in 2 bags. So I don't fall into that trap where certainly in Dubai, it's available. I mean, pretty much everything you want to spend, if you want to just go all out crazy, you can try to keep up with people, but make sure you understand if you're going to move here that not only is there always somebody richer than you, but there's thousands of people that are so much richer than you that it would be ludicrous to even try to keep up with them. So this is a really good way to go broke if you're trying to keep up with other people. You just simply can't. So I don't fall victim to that. You can live a very, very basic life with a fantastic lifestyle in Dubai for not a lot of money. It's actually way cheaper than any other metropolis city in the entire world. And a lot of people, when you say that, they push back. They're like, well, no, wait a second. Groceries cost a lot of money. And, I tried to buy lobster there and it was really expensive. Yeah, sure. There are certain things that are expensive. But what are the biggest expenses in life? Number one is real estate, which is very cheap here. You get an insane property for very little money here. Number two has got to be taxes, right? Taxes are free. And even 2 years from now, when they go to 9%, that's nothing. Education is much cheaper. Healthcare is much cheaper. All of the major expenses. I mean, people laugh here about gas. They basically joke around. It's like water. You know, it's an extremely cheap place to live. So don't believe the hype. Dubai is not expensive at all. But you want to spend 50 grand a month or 100 grand a month, you could easily do that. Like restaurants everywhere. You can spend $1,000 easily at most of the restaurants here if you wanted to. But you don't have to live that lifestyle. It's nothing. As to the second part, is it extremely hot? Yeah, it's hot. But for someone like me, first of all, most people don't spend the summer here. Most people actually do go home, wherever home is. A lot of Europeans in Dubai, some Americans, maybe a few Canadians, Australian. But, you know, you can go somewhere else. A lot of people do that. But I have spent a couple summers in Dubai. I'm spending this summer in Dubai. I think it's fine. And in fact, as of right now, in what month are we in? We're in July. I have logged 126 kilometers of running over 11 runs in July. So what's the date today? July 18th, I've ran 11 times for, 130 kilometers, basically 3 marathons so far. I run in 43, 45 degree weather. Is it hot? Yeah. Yeah, I look like I jumped in a swimming pool when I come home, but I do it. It's just life. 8 months a year, the weather is absolutely perfect. And 4 months a year, it's really hot. So if you don't like that, fortunately, Dubai is the greatest place on the planet for air conditioning. It's just every single place you go is air conditioned. So the city is entirely designed understanding that it's hot. I was in France last week. We went to the Champagne region, then we went to Paris. It was only 28 degrees, something like that. But I'll tell you, it was way hotter than Dubai because it's just so uncomfortable. No matter where you go, you cannot escape. The sun is, for some reason, a lot hotter there. It just feels like 28 in Paris, sunshine. It's hot. And there's no air conditioning. The taxis don't have air conditioning. The hotels minimal air conditioning. You just can't escape it. So when we came back to Dubai into 40 degree weather, we actually felt more comfortable here. It's a little bit weird. You have to experience it. But don't go out walking if you're not a person who can stand the heat. If you don't like the heat, you don't ever have to step foot in the heat and you can live a totally normal life. I mean, really, honestly, think about it. When in your home country do you really spend significant amount of time outside? Not much. So I actually think it's fantastic. And like I said, I just deal with it. If I have to go to the shopping center, in Dubai, they have strip malls where you can basically walk inside next to the promenade. So you're even in air conditioning while you're walking the streets. They've planned for it all. Plus, they've got that new loop system, which is 90 kilometers of indoor walking and biking paths that's going to be surrounding the entire city. And this intricate system of biking and walking paths where 10 years from now, you will not have to step foot outside. So Dubai is incredibly awesome. It's very, very cheap to live. And don't bother trying to keep up with rich people because they've got stupid amounts of money. Like here in Dubai, sometimes people will flash their picture of a Bugatti, for example, and they'll say, how much is this? And naturally, people are going to be saying things like, oh, that's a $4 million car. Or that's a, $5 million. Where'd you get all the money? And then somebody will say, look closer, right? Look closer. How much is this? And then inevitably someone in the comment section will understand what they're saying. You'll look at the license plate and it'll say like number 6. That license plate probably cost $20 million or $15 million. Like they're so rich here that they are competing for who has the best license plate closest to the number 1. I think the ruler has the number 1 plate on his G-Wagon or something. But yeah, it's a place. It's just don't bother. Don't bother. You think you have a nice watch? You don't. Don't even wear it. I don't even wear my watches here. It's totally ridiculous. So don't do it. Who cares? That stuff means nothing. I'm not impressed at all with stuff. I chase adventure and excitement in my life, and I pay for experiences. I don't pay for stuff. Stuff is ridiculous. My wife gets all the stuff. She's not a minimalist, but I am. All right. Please remind us of the super low-hanging fruit strategy. Is it going long SPY when VX30 to VIX roll yield is positive, or is it long SVXY? Well, long SPY won't work. You'll actually underperform the SPY if you did that. Long SVXY will work, but you'll have tremendously large drawdowns. So I think, I don't remember what I said, but I'm just guessing, a low-hanging fruit strategy, I would say you're probably looking more at shorting the SVXY, or go long the SVXY, go short vol, when the VX30 to VIX roll yield is above 7%. I think as far as low-hanging fruit, it's not going to outperform me, obviously. It's going to be well short of that, but it's going to crush the S&P long term. So that's your low-hanging fruit strategy. You want to make sure that you're not, because the VX30 to VIX roll yield is positive probably 84% of the time, 83% of the time. That's too much to short vol. You're going to have excruciating drawdowns if you're short vol 83% of trading days. So you want to kind of reduce that a little bit, get your threshold to like 6, 7, 8%, and you'll probably be okay. Probably looking at, 50% drawdowns rather than, 80 or 90. So that's probably somewhat what I said. All right, you previously had a Panamanian residency, true, but ended up in Dubai. What turned you off of Panama? I would think the weather is more temperate in Panama. So I was a resident of Panama under the Friendly Nations visa there. It's tax-free. It's not technically a tax-free country, but they have a territorial tax system there, which means that you're only taxed on locally sourced income, and everything outside of Panama is not taxed. And my VTS subscribers, I only have 2 from Panama, so I was tax-free. The reason that I left Panama, one, it's not a convenient place, right? It's just not. It didn't feel like it was convenient to live there. Like, yes, there's grocery stores, but they're kind of few and far between. They're not great. I lived in a really, really nice area of Panama, and it was still, it's not at all what I would consider convenient. Now, I'm spoiled because I live in Dubai and Taiwan, 2 places that are just ludicrously convenient. I mean, anything you want is immediately accessible anywhere, but Panama wasn't. The second thing is just the location, right? Because, of course, Taiwan with the wife, Canada with my family. Panama is kind of a place that we go to Europe a lot. My wife and I like to travel to Europe. So it was a little bit annoying. And then the third thing was, I never felt safe. I'm serious. There were times, and I don't mean any offense to anybody who's from Panama or from Central or South America. I just always had this feeling that there was danger there. Again, Dubai, I mean, you can put a Rolex watch on a table and come back 6 hours later, it's still there. But Taiwan's probably the same thing. Panama just didn't feel safe. I mean, there were times when I got into a taxi, and again, I'm not trying to be rude or offensive to anybody, but there was always that thought in the back of your head, like, is this guy just going to drive me somewhere and then ransom me off? Or like, it's just one of those feelings that I certainly did not want my wife going there. It just wasn't safe. And it's beautiful. I had this incredible running path. There's this big loop that was just amazing. Sorry, I can't remember the name of it, but it's in some of my previous live streams. If you go back like 3-4 years, you'll see I had an incredible view. It was a nice place, but it just can't hold a candle to Dubai, unfortunately. Dubai is just the #1 place in the world. I can't say that enough. I know people hate on it. People think it's the worst place in the world, but if you can come here, I don't think anybody would regret that. All right, does the whale fund stop loss only apply to covered call phase, or do you also stop out of 10% unrealized on short put? So I really don't like to get into strategies where I don't fully explain it, but unfortunately last week somebody asked me about this, so I put on a trade live, and I guess here it is. So let's do another one just so you can watch this. I'm not going to explain much, and this is what I consider like a drive-by trade where I'm not going to circle back and fill in any of the details. So don't follow this. This is not a good way to trade, to just get partial information from people and then try to trade it. It's the same reason why you should just unfollow all traders on social media who are giving trade recommendations, because they're not telling you the position sizing, they're not telling you the diversification, they're not telling you the risk management. They're certainly not coming back and reporting results on all trades. They're only showing you the good ones, and they're burying the bad ones. So don't listen to me on this. If you want to just follow along, it's fine. But when I sell a put option on the VXX, essentially I put on what I call my 10% total value stop loss, which means for this trade, for example, the stop loss is all the way over here. Of course, it didn't hit it. This was a fully successful trade. So I can just re-up and do it again. But the 10% total value stop loss includes all the premiums. So it's just a way of making sure that you're not going to be that person who thinks that this is guaranteed money as long as I just keep going, right? This idea that people can sell puts on beaten up stocks, they can, I would have bought it anyway. I'm comfortable buying Tesla at 200, so why don't I just sell a whole bunch of puts at Tesla 200? It sounds great on Twitter, but to be honest, the thing when you're selling put options is you're only making a small premium, right? So it's not a world-beating strategy, and you're also not reducing your downside risk. So, other than the tiny little premium. So it's not without its risk. There are people trying to convince you that you're just making money doing things that you would have done anyway. Just not the case. Like sometimes, would you buy Tesla there? Well, if you would, then why not just buy Tesla there? You don't have to do the whole put system. But I do it anyway. But the only rule that I have is I'm not going to be that person that just keeps banging my head into the wall and it goes down further. Well, I'll give it one more week. I'll give it one more week. I'll keep going. Just use a 10% value stop loss. So for example, this trade, it's a 44 strike option. So I basically said one contract, it was right around $400, right? That's right about there is going to be the stop loss. And if the trade hits that in the first week, then it's time to close it and start over, right? Wait a day or two if you have to, but start over. Just start a whole new cycle. As long as it doesn't hit this, then when I do it the next week, I can do the same thing again, all right? I can just keep using that 10% value stop loss. If it gets kind of halfway there, well, I might be down 5%, and I'll keep track of that money that I'm down. And if it hits 10, then I'm out. If it doesn't hit 10, keep going. So that's all that I meant by that. But I can go ahead and sell another one because this one is almost certainly going to expire worthless. So I don't know, let's go 7 days in advance. Again, I'm probably looking, if it's a 44 strike option, I tend to look about 0.5-ish in premium. So I would be looking for something over 22 cents. This one isn't quite good enough. This one is too much. I could choose between these two. I would probably do the 44 in this case. So let's just do VXX 44, and I would do about a 5% portfolio allocation. So what's 5% of 160? You're talking about $8,000. So 8,000 on a 44. I can't quite get two contracts, but close enough. It's like 1.9, something like that. So if I were to do this trade, I could, if I was a real stickler for the actual exact contract size, I could do one, but there's nothing wrong with doing two of these. So it's just barely, it's 1.9. But anyway, 36 cents, 38 cents mid. There's nothing wrong with trying to get a little more. And then you could go ahead and sell this. So I'm probably not going to get 39, wait 30 seconds, standard 30-second rule, then go lower. Remember, when you're selling something, you're trying to get the most premium possible. So you go a little bit above the mid. If you're buying something, you want to buy it for slightly cheaper, you go below the mid. But let's drop it to 37. And these are very liquid. The VXX options, as well as UVXY options, super liquid, no problem. So I did two contracts at 4,400. So I basically spent the equivalent of 8,800 in margin. So my stop loss for this trade would be $880. So let's put that right somewhere there, close enough. So this is my trade now for next week. I've got 5 trading days and the price is right here. The break even is here. That's my trade. Simple as that. So I can just keep going with the put. If I get a sign, sell the covered calls, just keep going and just keep track of my 10% and just keep moving that line around. This is not rocket science. It's basically pretty easy stuff. So I would imagine somewhere inside that rant was an answer to your question, I hope. This is funny. Javier says, I try to tell my kids that a 50% loss is more damaging than 50% gain. Thank you for teaching. Yes. My old saying is losses are more costly to a fund than gains are beneficial. This is obvious. You don't want to be that person who thinks, oh, I made 50% this year. I lost 50% last year, but that's okay because it's break even, right? No, it is not. If you make 50% and then lose 50%, or the other way around, vice versa, you're still down 25%. So tell your kids absolutely avoiding losses is more important than chasing gains. Always. That is a standard, like top 3 investing rule that I could give you is if you want to increase your rate of return, the first place you should start is by reducing your risk, reducing your drawdowns. That is the best way to increase your rate of return. Unfortunately, we live in a world where that doesn't sell on social media. There are no eyeballs going to the person who says risk management is the most important thing. There is plenty of eyeballs for people who are looking to leverage everything up and do stupid things like buying leap options and buying long calls and, all these things, leveraged ETFs, millions of eyeballs on that. But the reality is for investing, the old, boring, safe drawdown reduction is by far the number one way to increase your rate of return. It's not even close. Chasing gains only gets you so far, and on a long enough time horizon, it's a failure. A bit off topic. I love off topic. Let me flash my interests here just in case anybody wants to go off topic. But what have we got here? How is your golf game lately? Ugh. Could you explain how club memberships work if one decides to move to Dubai? I can do that. The golf game itself is hurting. I have played my first round since last July, so I've played once in 12 months. My game's not good. I did shoot, what did I shoot? 71. I can still shoot a score. Like my range doesn't really change because I was always such a consistent player. I was never the flashy type player. I was always just extremely consistent. So I can still keep the ball in play, but it's pretty ugly. So I probably don't look like a professional anymore, even though my scoring would tell you my range is anywhere from, I think I shot 65 like 2 years ago. And I also shot a 77, I think 2 years ago. So as far as a range, it's a pretty wide range. But yeah, I'm still a +2, +3 handicap, but it's an ugly +2 or plus. It's like full on weekend hack +3. Whereas, before I was much cleaner, hit more solid shots. So it's not far off. I could probably get back into it if you gave me 10 games in a row. But yeah, it's pretty sketchy. As far as club memberships, little expensive, but I think just the best value because first of all, there's no initiation fee. So actually there is, but it's small. The initiation fee at the club that I was trying to join in Vancouver, there was a waiting list. So I had my name on the list and then I removed it because I don't think I'm going back to Canada. But the initiation fee for that club that I was joining was $130,000. And you don't get that money back. You just 130 grand just to get your foot in the door. And then you also pay about 8,000 a year for the dues. So that's a Canadian membership. There's memberships in the US that are similar. You could pay 50, 100,000. I mean, some clubs you could pay way more than that. If you're talking about places, I don't even know if you could get your name at Cyprus. Maybe it was many hundreds of thousands, but there's clubs that are expensive. Dubai has a very reasonable initiation fee. So I think I'm a member at what's called the Dubai Golf, which is 5 different golf courses. If you've ever seen the tournaments being played, there's 3 PGA events in Dubai every year, and all 3 of them are on the 3 courses I'm a member at. So Emirates Golf Club, Dubai Creek, and then Jumeirah Estates. I'm a member at all 3 of those. But it was 30,000 AED initiation, so that's like $10,000 US, which is very reasonable. And then it is 40,000 a year, which is about 12,000 US. So, but I mean, it sounds like maybe a lot more than people are used to because sometimes people can get in for 5,000, 6,000 a year. This is like 10 or 12. But what you get for it are, of course, 3, world-renowned championship golf courses. You get incredible practice. I mean, you should see the swimming pools. They're like beach clubs with actual white sandy beaches on them. The gyms are incredible. There's 4 restaurants at each of the courses. So it's a club. It's a full-on club. So I feel like it's totally worth it. Now, I played once last year, so 12 grand for 1 round of golf. That's a little steep. That's an expensive round of golf, but if I was the type of person that finally freed up some time in my life to play some golf, yeah, it would be well worth it. Yeah. Hopefully you do decide to move to Dubai though, because you won't regret it. Look forward to seeing live stream later. Yeah, you can watch it on the rebroadcast always. Oh, here's a question from X. Just testing the X messages. Can't wait to try your options program when you have it ready. Yeah, I'm working on it. Look, I've golfed once in a year. I'm working as hard as I can. It just I'm not messing around. I am making videos, I am editing, I am putting it together, but it's just I already manage my full-time portfolio, right? This whole thing VTS started with just my own money, and it always has been, always will be. I'm managing my own portfolio, and that takes a lot of time. And then I'm also managing the full VTS community. My emails is a disaster. It's not the 6 hours it used to be per day. It's probably down to about 3 hours these days. But yeah, I'm just incredibly busy, and it's sometimes a little overwhelming. I'm a one-man show here. A lot of people, they ask me the question of, I don't know how, I don't ask personal questions about how much money we're managing, but I would imagine just based on, income from my end, plus the number of clients, I would imagine it's somewhere in like the, 200 million range, somewhere around there. If you're talking about an RIA with 200 million under management, they probably do have 3 or 4 employees. It's a full thing. So for me to be doing this all myself, plus the YouTube, plus all the editing, I mean, I'm doing all the accounting, I'm doing everything myself. So the option course, unfortunately, it's slow going, but it's going to be good. I'll make sure it's good, and I'll make sure that it's worth the price. And of course, I've teased it before, but I'll mention it again quickly. Because it's not something that I can just present it in total right away, it's going to be a lifetime thing. So you just pay once and then you're a member for life. And from this day until I die, if I ever add any option strategies, you just get it. You're never going to have to pay for anything again. Dubai is Coke Central. I don't know what that means. Are you mean like literally Coke Central? Because if you're referring to drugs, I would strongly recommend that you do not have anything to do with drugs in this country. Just saying, I don't know what that means, but if it means what I think you're implying, nope, it is not. The people here follow the law, follow the letter of the law. It is the safest place in the world for a reason. It's because all of us know that they take things seriously here. Now, they're not so ultra serious. If you jaywalk, they don't care at all. If you're speeding in your car, it's not an issue at all. Regular low-hanging fruit stuff, totally allowed. There's drinking everywhere. I walk home with wine in my hand on the streets. It's not the strict country that people think it is. Like the liquor stores, 2-minute walk from here. And yeah, you can just walk down the street with a paper bag with alcohol and whiskey in it if you want. It's not what people, my wife and I go out. You've seen Instagram, there's girls in bikinis. It's not what people say it is. They just, negative propaganda against Dubai is off the charts. But serious crimes, don't ever commit serious crimes here. That is an absolute no. So I don't know what this is referring to, but if it's anything to do with, no, it is not true. Is your wife jealous when you're alone in Dubai? You can ask her. She's probably on the stream right now. I would say a resounding no. She's got a much more exciting life than I do. And I would imagine she could appreciate the time alone. When we're together here, we went to Paris and the Champagne region for our 15th anniversary. So we were there for about 3 weeks, and we had an incredible time. Wasn't cheap, but it was like we spent about $25,000 in 3 weeks. But anyway, actually more than that, but it wasn't cheap, but we had a fantastic time. And then we came back to Dubai and we spent 2 weeks here. And that is probably the most boring time for her ever. So when she goes back to Taiwan, of course, she has her family, her friends, her life, her house, her hobbies. She's got all that. When she's here, it's kind of like the two of us, because I work so much that she kind of just spends a whole lot of time by herself. So I would say no. I would say she's super happy. Not happy to be apart from me, but we're so used to it. Like, this is life. I'm not one of those people that thinks that you have to just be attached to your wife or your kids. I'm more of the mindset that the guy does what the guy is going to do and just make it work. If that means that you live in a different country, that's what that means. Like, for example, I'm going way too deep. I'm not going to divulge any personal information, but for example, her sister is also married and her husband lives most of the year in China. He's a plastic surgeon and he lives most of the year in China. He makes a fantastic income. Taiwan income is substantially lower. It's like 4 times lower. So he does what a man needs to do to make a good income and live apart, and they make it work. They travel back and forth, and it's great. It's fantastic. Good relationship. We're the same thing. We probably spend 8 months together a year, and we probably spend 4 months apart. Just the way it is. And I don't mind at all. Like when I'm working, I am zoned in. So what was the second part? I noticed the sponsorship woman approach easily. Is your wife jealous when you're alone in Dubai? I noticed that sponsorship women approach easily. I don't know what that means. Sorry, I don't know what that means. That means something to do with, I don't know. Sorry. Maybe be more clear. I really don't know. Here you go. There you go. She's laughing. She's laughing because she knows I'm right. We have an amazing time when we're together, and we both have very busy lives when we're apart. So no, it works perfectly for us. She'll probably tell you that she got sick of me and she's happy to go home, but no. I miss my cat as well. I miss her and the cat. It just is what it is. I'm here to work, and I've got a course to complete. So Panama is a bit different from UAE. Not double treaty agreements like UAE have. So not much value from Panama residency. Well, again, from my perspective, I have no, $100, $200 a month Panama income. So for me, it was a tax-free place. That was really the only reason I was there. And the benefit to Panama, I will say, is that they're extremely lax with things like that. So you don't even have to spend time there. You can just flash your passport once a year and it's kind of good enough. And then it's up to the home country of wherever you're living, whether they want to try to trap you into their tax regime. But certainly Taiwan doesn't do that for me. I wouldn't do this of course, Americans cannot escape worldwide tax. But if you were a European, if you were German, yeah, I don't think Panama has a whole lot of appeal. But for me, as somebody who I'm either Panama or Taiwan, or I'm Dubai, Taiwan, Taiwan doesn't really go after people for taxes like that. So it was not a big deal for me. But yeah, I would say overall, I think you're definitely right that the UAE, although you do have to live here more than any other place in the world, like it doesn't have to be 6 months. That's kind of a misconception. But you should live in Dubai more than any other place. So you could do a trifecta, something like that. You could have 3 different countries that you live in. You're a tax resident of Dubai and you spend 4 months here plus a day. And then you spend 4 months minus a day in Germany, and you spend 4 months minus a day in whatever, pick a country, Montenegro, whatever. And you can do that. I'm 2 countries. So I do try to live in Dubai for 6 months a year. And I love it. I mean, I'd stay here. I'd move my wife here if she wanted to, but that's for sure an absolute no. She loves it for visits, but she would never live here full time. And so it's fine. Your wife and her sister must be beautiful to have married 2 high earners. I think so. I'm not making sleazy comments towards her sister, but I think my wife is very beautiful. So yeah, keep that in mind. If people are interested, I don't typically do this because I don't care, but I do actually keep an Instagram where it's just a photo album for myself. So I don't even share it. How many followers do I have? 310. I've got 32,000 on YouTube. I've got 25,000 on Twitter, and I've got 300 on Instagram. It's because I never share my Instagram. I don't care about that kind of thing. But if you were interested, you can go to, you just search volatility trading strategies, and that's me. So we were in Paris like 2 weeks ago. And yeah, we posted a bunch of stuff of the trip to Paris, and it was fantastic. We were in the Champagne region, so of course we drank a ton of champagne. I know that's not trendy or even acceptable to say publicly, but we do enjoy our wines and our champagnes, and I'm not embarrassed to say so. I do work out an awful lot, so I think it balances out. But yeah, you can check out the old Instagram. We were in Norway last year. We were in Amsterdam last year. There's Belgium here. Where else? Golfing in Dubai. A little bit of running stuff. Taiwan. Yeah, we do some stuff. So there you go. The old Instagram. I don't care if people follow. It's just a personal photo album. I don't plug it. I don't show it. Whatever. It is what it is. All right, cool. So hour and 4, pretty solid. Usually I come on and I say it's going to be an hour, and then it's always 2 hours. So let's cut it there. Hopefully people learned a few things about the short vol trade, and we will be back next week.